Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we are on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, both of our TV stations, of course, on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. In addition, we're on 88.1 WBFH, the Biff out of Bloomfield Hills. That service of the Bloomfield Hills School District, brought to you by the station manager, Ron Whittables, each and every day getting us on the air. We thank Ron Whittables and the entire team over at Bloomfield Hills Schools for joining us each and every day on the Megacast, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon here on our family of TV and radio stations. In addition, we're on the web, civiccentertv.com. And just go to our website, click on our Watch Live link, and you can watch us there live in high definition during the Megacast, as well as our original programming, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're also on Facebook each and every day via Facebook Live with a community partner. And today, that community partner is the West Bloomfield School District. We thank them for joining us on Facebook, and we will talk to them about many updated school plans for the fall, as well as what they're doing to honor the class of 2020 here in the first hour of today's Oakland County Megacast program. In the meantime, as always, we kick off the show by talking to you about the latest news and headlines that's important to know about COVID-19 and other top stories in the local area. Making news today, our top story, no fans at the Detroit Tigers home opener. Get ready for the strangest opener in Tiger baseball history. After the coronavirus pandemic shut down baseball for months, the Tigers will finally hold their home opener tonight at Comerica Park against the Kansas City Royals. The game will be played with no fans in an empty stadium. Players will have to not only adjust to the silence, but also to no spitting, no chewing seeds, and no high fives. Fans can still watch the game. First pitch tonight at 7 o'clock, and the game is broadcast like most Tigers home games on Fox Sports Detroit. So if you thought it was weird to be at the end of July with the Detroit Tigers in first place in the American League Central, even more weirdness coming up as the Tigers kick off their home games today at Comerica Park tonight, 7 o'clock at Comerica, with no fans in attendance. And this is a bit of the new normal. We got a little taste of it over the weekend with Tiger baseball and with other baseball teams as well. NBA games have started to scrimmage down in the bubble in Orlando, and they had no fans in attendance. And so we got a little taste of what it's going to be like. Some broadcasters will be feeding in ambient crowd noise, and some will even be digitally putting members of the crowd in the seats as the season goes on. But this is definitely a weird adjustment for fans and players alike, Ronnie.
It is, and for those that are Tigers fans, opening day is like a national holiday in the city of Detroit. So much more so than what we've seen in other cities. So not only is it late, obviously, the good thing is, though, there's no snow. Yes. I've been to opening day where we've had snow before. So the good thing is the weather is nice if the rain holds off. But this is a huge adjustment to not only the fans, but the players and really the city of Detroit and all the businesses surrounding Comerica Park.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting day downtown and all throughout the metro area as Detroit Tigers baseball fans celebrate the home opener today with no fans in attendance in empty Comerica Park as the first place Detroit Tigers kick off their home games. Other stories at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. 1,041 new coronavirus cases in Michigan on Sunday with no additional deaths as reported by Michigan's State Health Department. The death toll now stands at 6,149. An additional 1,041 coronavirus cases have been reported by the State Health Department on Sunday. That brings Michigan's grand total to 78,019 cases. The large number of cases reported on Sunday is due to a delay in processing laboratory result referrals from Friday evening through Saturday morning, according to a statement from the health department. Sunday's report includes cases that would have been included in Saturday's report, but were not processed in time. So now we're starting to see this run. We're starting to see the ramifications of delays in test results show their head to the public, as we now have, for the first time in several weeks, maybe even over a month to my recollection, 1,000 confirmed coronavirus cases or more in a given day. Of course, this is not 1,000 new on the day of that were reported, but as was stated in this article, in this report, that is a combination of Sunday and some of Saturday and late Friday's testing results.
We talked about this late last week, how some of the labs were already in the process of having the delays on the test results, because the good thing is we are testing a lot more than what we have in the past. Those tests are available. However, there is a delay in getting those results from the lab, and we're seeing that here. The good thing out of this, no deaths reported, and if that's an accurate assumption, then that at least shows that things are improving here in Michigan.
Yeah, about if you divide the caseload up from Sunday, taking into effect that it's got several hundred cases from Saturday, you're probably right around the 500, 600 mark, which is where we were at for most days last week, instead of having right around just under 10 deaths, but between 5 and 10 deaths, as we had been seeing normally. No deaths reported on half of Saturday, let's say, the end of Friday and all day on Sunday. So that's definitely a good sign, and maybe this is what we're going to be used to seeing for the next several days as the state and local health departments continue to adjust to delays in test results. We're going to try to get local health departments or the state health department on to talk more at length about what they're doing to mitigate this, what they can do to work around this, and how those delayed test results as it relates to reporting coronavirus cases could impact the state going forward. Lastly, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Moving Michigan back to phase 3 is likely if behaviors don't change. Jerry Anderson isn't ready to advise Governor Gretchen Whitmer to move the state of Michigan back to phase 3 of the 6-phase Michigan Safe Start plan just yet, which featured no gatherings, no in-person education, and limiting non-essential retail to curbside or delivery. But the chairman of the Michigan Economic Recovery Council said it is, quote, probably inevitable, end closed quote, that the entire state will need to regress to the flattening phase, phase 3, if residents don't take efforts to reduce the growing spread of COVID-19. The governor said she would move the state backward on the reopening phases if the spread of the virus warranted it. She's also said that community spread would be a greater indicator of whether or not she's going to phase back in the 6-phase Michigan Safe Start plan than general spread. So maybe the influx of cases we still see, considering it's kind of leveled off and there's not a high death toll, is not a cause for alarm just yet. However, if that continues to increase, or we start to see community spread in certain problem areas that we've had in the state throughout this pandemic, like Detroit in the city and in the metro area and in Grand Rapids as of late, that maybe we could see statewide or at least regionally in those MERC regions, Michigan Economic Recovery Council regions, a phase back to phase 3.
There are a lot of factors that go into determining whether or not they are going to move us forward or move us backwards. And one of the things they look at is cases such as Harper's and East Lansing, where you have somewhat of a large event that could be a super spreader, that they can trace back to one event and not a random community spread that they can't trace to just one large event. So there are a lot of things that they're looking at and a lot of factors that they review to make these determinations. What's so hard is as we are going forward and getting closer to kids returning to school, how is this going to work if we remain in this phase here? But what happens if we send the kids back? They're in like 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks back into the schools and back into the classrooms, and then they have to pull back and send them all home. That's what's going to be so hard for so many families and so many parents.
And that's one of the bigger questions, and we'll talk definitely with that with the West Bloomfield School District. We have their Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Deanna Barash, on with us today about that scenario. That's a worst-case scenario, but I think the phasing back that would initiate something like that on a on a large scale level with several school districts or all school districts in the state would be in a situation where there would be community spread. Just reading from an article we posted last week on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus that quoted the governor. She had said, quote, if we have 140 cases in Wayne County, for instance, but we have a nexus, they all came out of one house party or they all came out of one facility, then we can trace and isolate. But if those 140 cases have no nexus, they are just randomized. That means there's community spread. If there's community spread, that is alarming, and that is when we look to take a step back. So as long as this contact tracing of the COVID-19 spread is able to be done effectively, and they can find where it originated or places it may have originated and isolate those groups for the incubation period and stop the spread from there, that's less of a cause for concern than necessarily it going at random and not being able to trace where it came from, in which case it could be everywhere, and that's when you start to say, that's when you start to hit the brakes.
It's also one of the reasons why it's so important, if you are contacted by one of the tracers, that you be open and honest with them about where you've been and the people you have been around, because this is one of the things that they're going to look into to see if your case is tied to one large event or one location, or if it is a part of the community spread.
All those stories and more on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. In addition, we have links to reputable resources with COVID-19 information from the federal, state, and local level, including the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan COVID-19 page, Oakland County's COVID-19 page, and information from local municipalities in our coverage area. civiccentertv.com/coronavirus for all your top stories and important information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and more, as we continue to battle through different nuances each and every week in regards to this virus. And there are certain programs in place and initiatives in place on the local level, on the state level, and definitely on the county level. And to talk to us in more detail about the county's programs and the commission's continued work to battle not only through this COVID-19 pandemic, but what happens after the pandemic has passed, so we can recover from it. We're joined now by the Oakland County Commissioner from the 13th District. Marcia Gershenson joins us once again on the Oakland County Megacast. Commissioner Gershenson, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate having you on. How have you been since we last spoke?
I've been good. I mean, I am totally following all the quarantine regulations. I'm a senior. My husband's a senior. We take it completely seriously. I found your last segment really interesting, because the problem is the lag time in getting the test results. My son and daughter they drove across country to come to Michigan from California, and they were tested over a week ago. And I just texted them, I don't think they've gotten their results yet. Well, that's problematic, because maybe they were fine a week ago, and then who knows what they are now. And like you said, it's the ability to do the contact tracing. So I was going to recommend you have the Oakland County doctor. His name is Russell Faust. Yes. He's actually in the paper today talking about the difficulty in the lag time of labs.
Yeah, we've talked to Dr. Faust before, and it'll be interesting. We're going to try to reach out to him definitely to get more details on how that could impact the county's response, because the county does a lot of its own contact tracing in partnership, of course, with local municipalities in the state of Michigan and so on, in order to protect from that community spread that we were warning about in our opening headlines.
Right. And in the meantime, we're doing so many things at the county. I don't know, have you had our county exec, Dave Coulter, on the show?
Yes, we have.
Okay, very good. So you know that the county received $219 million in CARES funding, and that is money we've been trying to get out into the community and help small businesses reopen, as well as giving money to veterans and nonprofits and schools. We're working with the schools. That's a really, not to digress, but that's such a perplexing problem, because I know so many young families who are suffering because the kids are home, they need to go to work, and it's creating quite a strain on the whole family dynamic, including a lot of marriages. So it's a very complex problem. I'm very hopeful that the schools will be able to open at least. I think I heard some schools are talking about breaking classes into 2 segments, opening 2 days, taking Wednesday off for cleaning, and then opening the second 2 days. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. You've got West Bloomfield on following me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. But I did want to be sure all of the listeners and viewers knew about the newest small business recovery grant, because we had grants. We were overextended. We're now opening up a new grant. And they are for any retail stores, restaurants, personal service business like beauty salons and fitness centers that were impacted by the pandemic, had to have suffered revenue related to the pandemic, whether they were closed or had to hire additional help. So the application is on our website at oakgov.com. And I would encourage anyone that's listening whose business has been impacted to please apply.
Commissioner, if I am a small business, what's the best way for me to go about to apply? I know the application is on the website, but what's the most that the small business can receive? And can you clarify, it's a grant and not a loan, correct?
It is a grant, right. So that's a big difference between a grant and a loan, although many of the loans that have been given out are being forgiven. But this is a grant, and I believe it's up to at least $10,000. But the best way is to go through oakgov.com, but also to reach out to your commissioner. You know, you have 3 commissioners in West Bloomfield, and there's 21 of us all over, and we're advocating for residents, helping them get their unemployment, which has been an ordeal for a lot of people. For some people, it's gone smoothly, but for others, it's created problems. So I work almost every day with different families that are struggling to get through the red tape. And we've got a phenomenal department under the direction of Jennifer Llewellyn from Michigan Works, who's a real incredible person, very interesting person to have on your show as well. Have you met Jennifer?
Yes, we've met Jennifer. We talked to her extensively previously.
Okay. So she's just doing incredible work, her department, and we just allocated an additional $1 million to her department. It's funny, $219 million is so much money, and yet we're giving out millions of dollars to people because this is what we need to do to restart the economy. In addition, the state of Michigan received $100 million in CARES funding for small businesses. So that one is available through the state website. And then we also have an entrepreneur fund where we're trying to help those people that are entrepreneurs and may not have the same qualifications as a small business does. I think a small business has to have under 100 employees. Entrepreneur can have 1 employee. So we're really trying to hit all the targets, and if in your programming you sense that there's a need that we're not addressing, I hope you'll reach out to me or any one of the commissioners.
We absolutely will. Marcia Gershenson with us. She's the Oakland County Commissioner from the 13th District. So you talk about aid for these small businesses, and we've gone through those programs a little bit at length with other commissioners. We had Kristen Nelson on last week who explained in a lot of detail a lot of those programs.
Great.
And how they've been working in her district. So you did mention earlier that the county is also focusing on providing additional aid and assistance to schools as they prepare for the fall. Could you go into a little more detail about how the county is currently working with the schools and continues to work with our local school districts as they try to tackle this ever complicated issue of educating kids in the fall with the element of the unknown with this pandemic still very much in place?
Sure. I just do want to leave a little bit of time. I was going to make a statement about the foreclosure trial. I've been getting a ton of questions about that. But in relation to the schools, we have partnered with Beaumont And there's going to be a hotline for parents whose children are going back to school. If parents have any concerns about their child's health or somebody in the class or any question at all, there will be a free hotline for parents to access when kids get ready to go back into school. And another thing we're working on right now is children are impacted not only academically, but socially too. This is having a big impact on children's mental health. So one of the things we're really focusing on now, some schools have mental health services, but like not enough, not nearly every school in Oakland County. And we really feel there's going to be a surge in the need for mental health services for youngsters. So this is something we're trying to address for seniors. I don't know if Commissioner Nelson spoke about her incredible program that's geared towards seniors and loneliness and issues seniors are facing. But we're also predicting that there's going to be a lot of issues with children. And in that came in the news last week with the Grace case. But more than that, the children that are adjusting to not being with their friends, and some kids respond better to learning online and some don't. There's a lot of emotional aspects, and that might be interesting to talk about with West Bloomfield too, especially for those 10th and 11th graders that are supposed to be applying to college. And everything we've always done, we're going to be doing differently now. And this is a generation that's really going to be impacted by the virus long term. So we want to try to address some of those psychosocial needs.
Marcia Gershenson, Oakland County Commissioner from the 13th District. One more quick question about schools before we'll go into the foreclosure lawsuit and get an update on that. We've talked previously. We talked previously with Representative Brenda Carter, one of the state representatives, and it was actually mentioned. I brought this up with other commissioners and other government officials we've spoken to, that Representative Carter had an educational experience town hall with a bunch of the local school districts and talked about providing programs. The question came up about providing programs to families to be able to engage their kids locally, or at least be able to supervise and assist their kids with online learning when parents are going back to work. Is there anything that the county maybe is working on with community organizations, with local businesses, with child care providers to help provide those services to families as they're approaching the fall, trying to go back to work if they have to go back into the office, or even if they're working from home and just need to be able to focus, to provide outlets to have children outside of the home continue their learning and provide for these families?
Well, one thing that became very obvious during this whole crisis is the difference between the have and the have-nots, and that so many of our kids do not have access to the internet. So that is something that we're looking at as commissioners to include in our budget to be sure that every community has broadband service. And this is something that the county has looked at before, and they 15 years ago, and they were unable to accomplish the goal of every community having internet. But that is something that we're really focused on, is being sure every child has the materials if indeed it turns out to be another semester of online learning to succeed. So we're working with the state reps. Brenda Carter's doing an incredible job because her district, Pontiac, has been disproportionately affected by some of the problems that we've become aware of. So it's a goal, I know, of County Executive Coulter. It's a goal of the commissioners to try to equalize the playing field so that every child, no matter where they're learning, has access to the right tools they need.
Marcia Gershenson with us. She's the Oakland County Commissioner from the 13th District. Transitioning, you had mentioned previously in passing, there's a lawsuit currently underway regarding a foreclosure of a property by Oakland County. Could you go into details for those unfamiliar about what that situation is and where that lawsuit is currently in place?
Okay, so I did want to give a little bit of an update, understanding that this is primary season and that there's a very contested primary for the county executive seat. So I do want to make a statement that this is not, I'm not making any political statement here. So I went through the court ruling, and I'm going to actually read it so that I'm accurate. But the Supreme Court ruled to end a practice that the county was using to sell foreclosed properties at a profit to the county. Our treasurer, Andy Meisner, was working under Public Act 123, which was written in 1999, which shortens the amount of time property owners have to pay their delinquent taxes before losing their property under a process called tax reversion. The act was originally intended to eliminate blighted and neglected properties, criticized that it creates undue hardships on homeowners, and even those homeowners that have minor debt, like this gentleman, Raffaelli, who owned $8 and change and was foreclosed. The Supreme Court issued a ruling, and the wording is pretty hard to understand. So I've translated it to say that there's a rule in government, a longstanding rule, that government can take property from an individual if it's for the public good, such as roads, sports arenas, I-75. They can take that property from it's called a taking, from the owner, but they have to pay just compensation. So in this case, we took the house. The guy owned around $8 and change, and we didn't pay him anything for it. And we have a right to get the taxes, interest, penalties, and fees. But in addition, we took the profit when the house was sold. And that is what the Supreme Court ruled against. And really, the commissioners have been against this since last September. We issued we did a resolution against this process. Commissioner Bob Hoffman out in Highland had an issue with property where he felt their property was unjustly taken. So he authored a resolution that many of us signed on to. And unfortunately, our treasurer did object to that. And so it didn't go anywhere for a while. Well, now we have formed a new committee, and it's a bipartisan committee. And it's a committee not to investigate the treasurer. It's a committee to investigate the policy and to see if we can change it and maybe put in some protections for people that owe very little amounts, so that they don't have to go through this process. There's like an automatic process when you don't answer the tax notices, the delinquent tax notices, and it goes into a computer and it just starts working automatically. So we want to see if we can change that to where we're alerted, or the treasurer's office is alerted, that this is a case that involves under a certain amount of money. So it's an effort, and plus we're going to have to come up with, the county is going to have to come up with between $30 and $50 million to settle this. So that's another reason that we have formed a special committee to look at where we're going to get that money, because that is taxpayer money. And that's one of the things the commission does, is we allocate your taxpayer money. And I can assure you, we allocate it to amazing things like the health department, the sheriff's department, so many great services we provide. This is not one of them. So we have to come up with a way that will not impact the services residents expect to pay this fine.
Well, and that's good to hear from the commission level that there is bipartisan work on this, where you see a problem that's within the rules that are in place for the county officials and for local counties like Oakland County, but also see the problems with some of those rules and try to work to make them as equitable as possible for our local residents. So good to hear. We'll keep up on that story for sure as it continues to progress forward. Lastly, I see behind you, the flag behind you is about voting rights. And so as we're approaching the primaries on August 4th and the general election in November, with all the other variables in place, getting people out to vote and inspiring people to go out to vote and have their votes counted, and especially in terms of absentee voters with the current issues with the mail. How much of an effort is Oakland County, especially the Board of Commissioners, putting in place, regardless of their constituents' political affiliations or candidates that they support, to inspire people to go out to vote and make sure that with these local clerks, we can make sure that everybody who does register to vote and goes to the polls or votes absentee has their voices heard in August and November?
Well, I don't know if you're aware of the new committee we formed to focus. Are you aware of the committee to focus on this election?
Yes.
So we are giving more money to local communities because they're having a difficult time finding poll workers. The average age of poll workers is 74, and that's a vulnerable COVID group. So we're really looking for a lot of younger people, and you could make $250 to $300, $350 a day. And it's gratifying work, but it is all day, and almost every community needs poll workers. So if you're out there and you're looking for some work, please contact your local clerks. In addition, we are also going to be sending you, for the November election, we're going to be putting the stamps on your return absentee ballots, because so many people don't realize it takes 2 stamps to return that ballot. So we're encouraging people to take it to your local clerk's office, where we've put out a box, a freestanding box, so no one has to touch it, no one has to touch anybody or see anybody. You can have your mask on and drop off your ballot. But we are really encouraging people to vote by mail or dropping it off in person. And I have to say that I keep hearing about people that are spoiling their ballot, which means they're voting Democrat and Republican. Now, I'm somebody who believes you should not vote party. You should vote for the best person for every job. But our system is so antiquated that for primaries, you can only vote one party. And if you vote both parties, your ballot is spoiled and it will not count, and you won't be notified if you're voting by mail. If you're in person, the machine just spits it out and says this ballot is spoiled and you'll get another one. But when you do it by mail, there's nobody that's going to give you that ballot back, because it's not counted until next Tuesday, and there isn't time to notify someone. So my closing words would be sure to stay on one side of the ballot. There's only one race, the circuit court race, that is nonpartisan, that everybody should vote for the person they support. And then if your community has any millages or issues that are specific to your community, those of course are nonpartisan. And I'm also just going to encourage people to wear a mask. We need to move on from this virus, and I'm convinced that if we all comply and wear masks and social distance, we're going to get better. I think there were no new cases over the weekend, which is pretty incredible. So
there was 1,041 total new cases that were reported over the weekend. Yeah, no new deaths, but there were 1,000 new cases. Of course, that's combined from partial Friday, Saturday, and then all of Sunday. Commissioner Marcia Gershenson, anything else for us before we let you go today?
Well, thank you for correcting me, and I hope to come back. There's so many pressing issues. It's such an important time, and we all want to be paying attention and doing everything we can to help one another, be kind, be loving. It's a tough time for people. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much. We appreciate having you on. Marcia Gershenson, Oakland County Commissioner, representing the 13th District on the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. So many great programs in place in Oakland County right now to support people, businesses, and schools, and it seems like they're going to continue that work after the pandemic as well, to make sure that as we're going through the pandemic, that we're okay and everybody is getting through as best as possible, but also after that we're able to spark recovery quickly and effectively as well.
I think one thing we are all learning, for those that don't appreciate what our elected leaders do for us, this pandemic has really put them in the forefront to remind people that our elected leaders are a vital part of this process, and so we need them, which then also goes into the reminder, make sure you get out and vote. And to make it easy on yourself, if you are going to the polls or you're even voting absentee, they have a sample ballot. All you have to do is Google sample ballot. There's a few different organizations out there. You put in your address, and it will give you what your ballot's going to look like, so that when you walk in to cast your vote, you can do it quickly, but you know exactly what's on there. So like what she's saying, they're already seeing people that are spoiling their ballots. So make sure you do a little bit of research before you walk into the polls and have your vote count. Because if you're taking the time to vote, you want to make sure you're doing it correctly.
And if you have any questions, definitely contact your local city, township, or village clerk. We have links to many websites from local municipalities in our coverage area on our website on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where you can find the contact information for City Hall, for Town Hall, for Village Hall, whatever the case may be in your situation, and contact your local clerk. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll talk about plans for the fall in the West Bloomfield School District with Deanna Barash. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations.
Oakland County Clerk Lisa Brown here with some important reminders about voting. Always use a blue or black ink pen when completing your ballot. Fill in the box next to your choice. Don't use an X, check mark, or circle your choice. In the August primary, don't cross party lines. Under Michigan election law, you can only vote for one party's candidates. Otherwise, your ballot will be spoiled and the partisan section won't count. Don't forget to check both sides of your ballot and vote the nonpartisan section. If you want to vote absentee, send a written request to your city or township clerk. Your ballot must be returned to your city or township clerk's office by 8 p.m. election night. And be sure to sign and date the outer envelope. If you spilled coffee on your ballot or made a mistake, you can ask your city or township clerk to cancel that ballot and issue a new one. Please don't use whiteout. If you already returned your absentee ballot and want to change your vote, you need to contact your city or township clerk no later than 4 p.m. the day before the election. Thank you for taking part in our democratic process.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dolan, our family of TV and radio stations, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, and Civic Center TV on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99, on 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 WBFH, The Biff. And today, as always, we are on Facebook Live with a local community partner. Our Facebook partner today, of course, is the West Bloomfield School District, and we are pleased now to be joined once again by their Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Deanna Barash, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Deanna, thank you for coming back again.
Thank you, Tyler, for having me.
We appreciate having you on. So since we've last spoken, the plans have in some ways been modified in the West Bloomfield School District for fall education. Could you give us an update on what has been changed and how that may impact families and students as we approach the beginning of the fall semester?
Sure, happy to. So yes, since the last time I was on, we have made the decision to start the school year with West Bloomfield High School remaining online, with our families in kindergarten through 8th grade having the opportunity to be in a blended situation, in a hybrid situation with an AM cohort and a PM cohort, which will allow our students to have 4 days a week. And then on Wednesdays, we would continue with remote learning only for everyone. And then Oakland Early College also would be in a blended model as well. So we have made some shifts, really, Tyler, because we took feedback from a variety of stakeholders within the district. So we ran focus groups a couple weeks ago that had elementary parents, middle school parents, high school parents, as well as our staff members about really what was important to them as we considered coming back to school. Also, we had the governor's roadmap that was released at the end of June, And we are currently in phase 4. And along with those recommendations and requirements from the governor's task force and the feedback from our community, we felt we needed to make a shift in what we had been planning around instruction to start the school year.
Deanna, can you quickly explain the AM and the PM cohorts?
Sure. So we will have roughly about a 3-hour chunk of instructional time in the morning. And then there'll be an 85-minute break in between the morning session and the afternoon session. Part of the government's requirement in phase 4 is that we disinfect every high-touch location every 4 hours. And by splitting the cohort of students, we're able to do this really sanitizing that needs to happen per the requirement, and to make sure that we have limited exposure for students and for staff. Then in the afternoon, the second cohort will attend, and so we will have a roughly 3-hour chunk of time for instruction in the afternoon as well. So it really provides that opportunity for continuity of learning. We also heard from our families that it was important that our teachers have the opportunity to build relationships with our students. What made the spring so successful was because we had established relationships with kids, and we won't have that in the fall. And so we need to make sure that our kids are getting back into school. We heard that loud and clear, that they have continuity of learning, that they have a set schedule, that they know that they're going to follow every single day. And so we really felt like this was the shift that we needed to make so that we could provide the highest level of instruction, that kids would be in school 4 days a week, and that we could still provide and maintain those requirements that are in the governor's plan. And so it's a lot to juggle. We know for our families that it was a very different message than what we had been talking about. But really one of the things we considered also was the fact that students would need to wear masks for up to 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day, and how hard that will be. Trying to figure out how we could cohort students for those long periods of time in small groups was really, really difficult, and really the reason why we're not bringing West Bloomfield High School back. And then also we wanted to make sure that we could sanitize, that we could provide childcare, we could do all those things that families need to have the most semblance of normalcy that we can, which is really tough to find at this point in time.
So Deanna Barash, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction with the West Bloomfield School District. The cohorts now, instead of being 1 day on, 1 day off, these cohorts are in morning and in the afternoon. In this case, morning and evening. How are those cohorts determined? Are parents choosing one versus the other, and it's a first come first served basis? Is it based on grade? How are those cohorts being determined?
Well, first we're starting with a transportation survey. We have to socially distance on the buses, so students will be required to wear masks. But additionally, we have capacity needs on the bus in order to be able to effectively socially distance. And so we asked our families, and if they've not yet done so in West Bloomfield, please, you have till the 31st to complete your transportation survey. We asked our families to indicate whether or not they needed bus service. Once we know who those families are, then we will go through sibling groups, and we will make sure that siblings are in the same cohort for ease for families, and then we'll begin to slot families into AM or PM. So there's a lot of factors to consider in order to make sure that we can evenly distribute bus riders, that we can make sure families stay together, that we are cognizant, we are offering childcare, kindergarten through 8th grade for our families as well. We have to make sure that that is balanced so that we can socially distance within our childcare system as well. So all of those factors play a role. We know that for many families, we're hearing, oh, the morning is better for us, it's better for the routine, and we know that their family needs. We're going to do our best to honor as many of those as we can, but certainly there are some limitations as to what we can do. And so we're taking transportation surveys this week. We are opening childcare registration this week, and so that families can begin to sign up for childcare. And then obviously we'll be working with our principals to make sure that our families are in the same cohorts, so we don't have families operating on 2 different schedules.
So Deanna, part of this adjustment has been to move high school students entirely virtual. With that being the case, I bring up an issue that's really across many school districts all throughout the state of Michigan as they're approaching potential for virtual learning, either in a hybrid nature or all together in the fall. How is the school district working to provide not only the systems that are needed for virtual learning, but also the other means needed, such as internet access to families that may not be able or may not have the means to get that access, so that their students aren't put at a disadvantage, both on the days that they are virtual learning and on the days where they're not.
Sure. I was happy to hear the commissioner talk about the movement across the county to provide internet access for all of our families. I do feel that that infrastructure is there, certainly, and so the more that our county can do to support that, the better for our families and certainly for everyone in order to be able to provide online learning. We have ordered and we'll have available additional Wi-Fi hotspots for families as kind of on an as-needed basis. So families will have the opportunity to complete a survey about their internet needs, and we'll be able to provide that for them if they should be in a situation where they don't have access to Wi-Fi somewhere else or data plans through their phones, etc. So we have provisions in place. We've made sure that we've done enough planning ahead of time that we're able to support if families are in need. Certainly, this is an ongoing issue that we'll monitor. We'll continue to purchase hotspots if need be. That is one of the purchases that we're using our COVID money. So the money that we were given by the state to support schools and online remote learning. So that is one of the expenses that is allowable and one of the things that we're doing as well.
How will the child care system work?
So it'll be housed differently than what we had planned initially. We were going to have all of childcare in one location, which would mean that we would have students who were in buildings that were not their home schools. They would be exposed to kids that weren't in their own buildings. By moving to this model, we're able to provide childcare both AM and PM within the child's own school. So much less risk of exposure to students having to travel to different buildings and be around students that are not necessarily in their class or in their school. So we feel like we've really been able to solve that. We also want families to know that it is not ever our intent to certainly make a profit off having to offer childcare when we're not in session full time. So it is a break-even situation. Families on free and reduced lunch can apply for assistance through the DHHS. And then obviously we are only charging $15 per session, which includes lunch and a snack and childcare per session. So we feel like we've made it as affordable as what we possibly can. Again, we will work with families in those situations. It will be housed in the building. They will be really given time to work on the remote learning lessons. They will have the opportunity to do some individual kind of go outside and play sorts of things, that kind of support programming. And so families will be able to start to sign up for that. About the middle of the week, this week is when we're going to open that registration as well. It'll be run by our employees. So obviously through community education, we're able to provide this service. So it will be West Bloomfield employees of being able to interact with your kids, and we'll make sure that we have plenty of room and can make sure that we have that taken care of for families.
Deanna Barash with us. She is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction in the West Bloomfield School District. So as we're approaching the fall semester with the plans in place, they've changed a little bit. They'll probably continue to be modified here and there as we approach the first day of school and as we get into the school year. But in the event that we do have a situation similar to March, or hopefully if this were to happen at all on a much lesser scale than March, where we do have community spread and we do have an outbreak of some kind in the local area, in the state of Michigan, whatever it may be, and that sudden change does come into play. Is West Bloomfield ready for that? Are there plans in place for that situation that families can be aware of so that they also can anticipate that potential worst case scenario?
Yeah, so we are prepared because we were able to do it in March if need be. So if we move into phases 1 through 3 across either the region or the state, that means all students would be learning remotely. And so we would go right back to how we really moved in March and then concluded the school year. We have good plans in place. We have brand new technology, Chromebooks for every single student. We have a new learning management system to make it easier for kids to access their lessons, to access Zoom, for teachers to interact with their students. So we're prepared for that. We're prepared for phase 4, which is 4 days on with continuity of learning with an AM and a PM session, with cleaning, with transportation, with childcare, with food service. We're ready for that. And then obviously when we move to phase 5, then we will come back to 5 days of in-person instruction really with just some of those recommendations, so some additional cleaning and some social distancing, but we would move and then into that 5 days of regular instruction. So as you can imagine, it's a lot to plan for, that we have to really think about 3 different scenarios and what that might start and what our year might look like. We think right now that we'll be in phase 4. So we would be in a blended situation to start the school year for kindergarten through 8th grade. We don't know, and that could certainly change at any given time, that we would go back to phase 3, which means we'd have to be remote and we would be ready to distribute all of the Chromebooks that we needed. We'd get materials, supplemental materials in the hands of our students as quickly as possible. And then the other piece would be that we would have to certainly be ready to go back to phase 5, which would be 5 days of in-person instruction. So there are multiple levels of planning that are continuing to take place. So no matter what situation, we're ready to go.
In phase 5, if we were to move into that, would that bring the high school students back into the classroom?
Yeah, that is correct. So when you think about, and it was a tough decision, and I can tell you that our decision is a little bit different, of course, than what other neighboring districts are. But when you have to think about following social distancing, so in West Bloomfield, we are following the phase 4 required and strongly recommended guidance from the governor's roadmap. And in those 2 areas, required and strongly recommended, it says that you should socially distance, that students should wear masks, they should have limited access into the hallways, they should really remain with the same teacher as much as possible for the majority of the day, that food service should take place in the classroom. As you can imagine, in a building the size of West Bloomfield High School, over 1,800 students, the ability to cohort students when we have almost 100 course offerings and even half the kids in the building at a time, so between 900 and 1,000 students, it is virtually impossible. And so what we didn't want to face was that we would start school, we would have maybe several students or staff members who were exposed and or who had a positive test, which would then require us to quarantine and close the building. So then we're home for 14 days, and then we come back, and it could certainly turn into a repeat cycle. We felt very strongly that ability to have that continuity of learning for our high school students, that less exposure for kids and for staff, and quite frankly, the fact that we would not have these potential openings and closings, which is so disruptive, was very important to us. And that's the reason why we made that decision. When we move to phase 5, then we will bring everybody back to 5 days of in-person instruction. We will make sure that we certainly have all those safety and health protocols in place. But we would love to say that August 26th, our doors open, we're in phase 5, and we can have everybody back. And if we can, then we will. But at this point in time, we just didn't believe it was safe or feasible to bring the high school back in even a cohorted capacity.
A federal judge just recently ruled that Detroit Public Schools for their summer session had to have all of the students tested prior to being able to join the classroom and that learning setup. Do you see something like that happening in West Bloomfield, and do you think the students need to be tested prior to coming back to school?
The governor's roadmap addresses a number of items, and one of those really is around testing. And it is explicit in the plan, no matter what phase we're in, that we would work with the Oakland County Health Department and make that determination. We are educators, we are not medical professionals, and so obviously we will be working with the Oakland County Health Department and their guidance around testing, around quarantine procedures, around health screenings when students come in the door. We are fortunate in Oakland County that Oakland Schools has committed several of those COVID dollars to hiring school nurses. There'll actually be 2 nurses assigned to West Bloomfield. They really aren't there to do testing and to do that sort of procedural stuff. They're there to do exactly what you just talked about, which is that guidance. What do we need to do? If we have a positive case, if we have an exposure, how do we communicate with families? They are onboarding those nurses right now, and we anticipate having them with us early next week. And then we will certainly follow their lead. They are in training right now. They're going to give kind of consistent messaging. They are the conduit to the Oakland County Health Department. And so we'll want to make sure that whatever we do is under that guidance. I think we would be remiss, every district, to kind of go out on their own and write these hard and fast policies about testing and about how we quarantine and temperature checks and all those sorts of things, because that's really out of our realm of knowledge and responsibility. And so we will work with the Oakland County Health Department to make those decisions.
Deanna, as we're approaching all these different variables in the fall, potentials for sudden changes forward or backwards, it's already taking a toll in the spring semester on students and on teachers and on faculty. It certainly will again in the fall. What kind of efforts is the school district putting forth in terms of mental health, both for the students that will be in the classroom and will be learning virtually and whether at all levels K through 12, but also for your staff, your teachers especially, and the faculty as they're continuing to battle through this incredibly challenging time?
Sure. So, we were fortunate last spring, before this started, before our very first closure, we hired a K-12 school mental health specialist, and her position is to do exactly what you just talked about, whether that's programming, whether that's individual or small group kind of therapy, at least in the triage setting, to run some groups, to help our staff kind of process what's happening, to help students and families process what's going and to find resources from across the community. We also are fortunate to have a coach that works in the teaching and learning department who's working side by side with this mental health person. And so we are continuing to plan to provide those kind of support mechanisms. Part of what will be very important is that we monitor the mental well-being of our students that are learning both at West Bloomfield High School online and then through Lakers online, which is our only virtual option as well for our families. Because we know what is very important for kids and everyone is to have peer-to-peer interactions and obviously the student to be able to interact with the teacher. And it's very difficult or very different when you're having to do that online. So part of the governor's plan and that we will do is that there is a mental health screener that we will do with our students. We've already had it in place. We've used it in years past to make sure that kids that are learning both virtually and in person, we're identifying those who are struggling. So whether it's depression or anxiety or just the fear of the unknown and what's happening in the world around us, that we quickly identify who those students are. Work with their families, and certainly provide both community and in-district resources for them. The same is true with our staff. One of the things that we've done throughout the summer, throughout the spring, is to make sure that we are checking in with our staff members, that we're seeking their feedback. We are running webinars weekly with parents and with our staff members to kind of gauge everybody's feelings, to get feedback. Recently, we worked with Eric Whitney, who's our talent development and management, so HR person, to put together a staff FAQ document about all those things you just talked about. I'm really nervous about coming back to work. What if someone in my family is compromised and I don't feel comfortable? What happens if a student comes to school and I'm exposed? Those are all very real fears for our employees and certainly for our families as well. So we're continuing to be very transparent in our planning. We're continuing to reach out and to be available and to work with our education association to make sure that both our students and our staff feel comfortable and supported as they get ready to come back into the school setting.
Lastly, Deanna, as we're going into the month of August and students from the class of 2020 are getting ready to move on to their future plans, are there any plans in place from the West Bloomfield School District as of now to celebrate that class in some sort of a formal graduation ceremony?
Yes, it's Sunday, actually. So we are hosting 3 different graduation ceremonies, one at 9 a.m., one at 11 a.m., and one at 1 p.m. at West Bloomfield High School on the football field. Students were asked to sign up. We limited the number of slots so that we are meeting the governor's order around social distancing. They can have limited number of guests, certainly because we have to socially distance in the stands as well. But we wanted to make sure they had the opportunity to get back to school again. Typically, we don't have graduation on site, but they really felt strongly, and I think they're right, that it was such an odd end to the school year, and they really didn't have much closure. And so this was a way for them to get back to the high school, to get to see their friends, to get to celebrate one last time before they move on to the next phase of their life. And so we're looking forward. The weather should cooperate. For those families who wish to attend but can't get into the stadium because of the limited seating, we're working with you all at Civic Center TV to be able to broadcast that for our families as well. So we're fortunate that we're going to have the opportunity to celebrate the students and really to bring some closure to a very odd end of the year.
Deanna, anything else for us before we let you go today?
Other than Tyler, thank you as usual for having me. And for our West Bloomfield families, we want you to know that we value all your feedback, and really you should know that we're in a tough situation, and we recognize that for our families that this is a lot of unknown territory. And so you as moms and dads have to make the best decisions for your students, whether that's Lakers Online, so our online only option, whether that's sending your kindergartners through 8th graders back into our hybrid model, or really looking at West Bloomfield High School and remaining online. We know that none of these are ideal. We know that everybody has needs that need to be met, and we would like nothing more than to be able to come back to school normally in the fall. But right now, we have to follow the governor's orders. We have to make sure that we are keeping our students and our staff safe, and we are doing our very best to be responsive to all of our stakeholders and to make those best decisions possible.
Well, Deanna, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Deanna Barash, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction with the West Bloomfield School District, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back with the second hour of our programming today. We thank you for tuning in. You're watching the Oakland County Megacast on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99, on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, and on Civic Center TV in West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Orchard Lake, and Sylvan Lake. You are listening to us on 89.3 WBLD, Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and on 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. We thank Deanna Barash and her team at the West Bloomfield School District for joining us today and for being our Facebook partner as well. We will take a quick break and return with more. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Parks COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dolan, our flagship studios, Civic Center TV, and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and on 88.1 WBFH, the Biff, that makes up our TV and radio stations. In addition, we're online on civiccentertv.com. You'll click on our Watch Live link and be able to find us there each and every day, as well as our original programming and imported programming from other community outlets all throughout the local area and the state of Michigan. Civiccentertv.com. On our homepage, you'll click on Watch Live and be able to watch us on your computer, on your laptop, on your tablet, and even on your phone. In addition, you can listen to us online on lakesfm.com. That is the website of 89.3 Lakes FM. And today, as always, we're on Facebook via Facebook Live with one of our community partners, and that today is the West Bloomfield School District, as we continue to cover the top stories in the local area in regards to COVID-19. And of course, today is a big day for sports in the Metro Detroit area. It is opening day for the Detroit Tigers. Better late than never. It is late July. We have very much missed the full opening day, and it's going to be a different kind of experience this time for Tigers fans in the Metro Detroit area and all throughout the state of Michigan, as no fans will be in the stands. We have some information from Erica Jones out in the field about some different ways maybe that the community can celebrate this occasion, albeit under much different circumstances than usual. Erica, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Tyler. So, yeah, like you said, a very exciting weekend with baseball season getting started, but very, very different this year. The Tigers did have a great start to their season against the Cincinnati Reds. They had a 2-1 winning. So that's great for them. And tonight we have our home opener, which is very different this year. This is usually a holiday in Detroit in March. They have a huge festival. People start tailgating out there at 9 a.m. for these games, but very, very different this year. Unfortunately, we're unable to do that, but we do have our home opener tonight against the Kansas City Royals. And if people do still want to watch the game, although unfortunately there are no fans in stadiums, as we know, they're all playing in empty ballparks, but fans are able to watch on MLB Network and the Fox Sports channels. And also the game is being live streamed on a big screen downtown in Campus Martius. If people want to go watch the game there, you can check it out. Everyone does have to wear a face mask, but that's a great thing to do if people still want to enjoy the festivities and be downtown on the home opener today. But it is sad, unfortunately, that the biggest party of the year, as they call it, which is the normal festivities before the home opener, had to be canceled. The Detroit Athletic Club is also having a viewing party that is for members only. And then people, of course, all over will be having their own viewing parties. So although it's very different this year, it's still an exciting time. And there's several ways that people can get involved and still watch the game, enjoy the spirit. And we're off to a great season so far. So we're hoping that continues. We also have Michael Fulmer back pitching again after his injury for the first time starting tonight. So that should also be exciting for our team.
Well, Erica, thank you very much for that. She is out at a local baseball diamond as well, and maybe if you have some time today, get out with your kids, with your family, with some friends. Do so safely, and maybe play a quick game of catch as well as we go into this baseball season under very different circumstances than usual, with the Tigers, of course, not going to be playing with any fans in the stands at Comerica Park tonight against the Kansas City Royals. First pitch at 7 p.m. And Ronnie, what an interesting day it is for sports fans in the local area in Detroit, where unlike any other sport, unlike any other professional or college sport, the Detroit Tigers opening day is its own festivity, its own festival and celebration.
It is a national holiday for Tigers fans and so many people here within the Metro Detroit area. I've been for several years, and I'm not even a baseball fan. You just go to be a part of the city and to celebrate the Tigers and the upcoming season. So this is completely different. So many traditions are not happening this year around all of our sports, just not Major League Baseball, but we're going to see the same thing when the Lions start up and some of these other ones as well. I will say it has to be strange for the players to not have fans in the stands. I know that they're pumping in the audio so that it kind of seems like there are fans there, but what are your thoughts about that, because you are such a huge sports person?
It's interesting to me. I get why they're doing it on the broadcast, and I find it a little bit odd. I'd rather just have the scenery be the scenery without the added crowd noise in, because I think that brings a little more historical significance to the moment, where we'll look back on these games as being those COVID-19 games where there was nobody in the stands. You're hearing authentically what's happening on the field. You're hearing the crack of the bat louder than you ever have when people are hitting home runs. Especially, we heard a couple of them cracked yesterday and over the weekend from the Cincinnati Reds. I remember one in particular from Joey Votto of the Reds hitting a long ball, and that was probably the loudest I've heard the crack of the bat watching a baseball game in forever. I'd rather have that than added crowd noise or digitally added fans to make it look like a regular game. We know it's abnormal circumstances. We don't need an extra reminder of it being abnormal. I would just keep it as it is and go from there. So we have a couple minutes here. We'll go through more of our top headlines on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We mentioned the Tigers opening day being affected. That is our top story there. But also 1,041 new coronavirus cases were reported on Sunday in the state of Michigan, but no deaths. So that seems like a staggering number as the State Department brings the death toll to 6,149 people and the total cases to 78,019 total in the state of Michigan. The large number of cases, however, on Sunday was due to a delay in processing laboratory referrals from Friday evening through Saturday morning, according to a statement from the health department. Sunday's report includes cases that would have been included on Saturday's report, but were not processed in time. So while it's a staggering 1,041 new coronavirus cases reported on Sunday in the state of Michigan, those numbers skewed a little bit because of this crisis we're currently dealing with delays in coronavirus testing results. And so hopefully that gets under control here soon, Ronnie, so we don't continue to see large spikes in numbers like this and be behind the eight ball, so to speak, in tracking where the coronavirus is continuing to progress in Michigan.
Because while you're waiting for those test results to come in, you're still living your life, and you could, if you're asymptomatic, be living with the virus, not knowing that you have it, and you're still going out in public. So testing is going to be a big part of trying to get this virus under control. And then I know that they are starting the vaccine testing today as well. Yes. So hopefully you put all of these pieces together and we could start to get them worked out and try to get this virus under control. I will say one thing that is good is we're still not seeing the shortage of testing kits like we did in the beginning of this pandemic. Yeah, we're definitely in a better situation during this minor spike we've been in the last several weeks than we were in March, and we're definitely still in the state of Michigan in a much better spot than in other states. That being said, the spike in coronavirus cases remains a concern for officials at the state level. Michigan moving back to phase 3 is likely if behaviors don't change. Jerry Anderson isn't ready to advise the governor, however, to move the state of Michigan back to phase 3 of the 6-phase Michigan Safe Start plan, which featured no gatherings, no in-person education, and limiting non-essential retail to curbside or delivery only. But the chairman of the Michigan Economic Recovery Council said it's probably inevitable that the entire state will need to regress to the flattening phase, as phase 3 is known, if residents do not take efforts to reduce the growing spread of COVID-19. The governor has said she would move the state backward in the reopening phases if the spread of the virus warranted doing so. And with these cases being heavily contact traced and not necessarily being showing any indication of community spread, it doesn't look like we're quite at a point to be fearful of an impending move back to phase 3, but that's still very much in the cards. It's definitely something that the Michigan Economic Recovery Council, led by Jerry Anderson, their chairperson, is considering advising if the need presents itself, and something that we know Dr. Caldoun from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and Governor Gretchen Whitmer are monitoring very closely. I think about so many of these small businesses that are still working to realign and get their footing so that they can survive this pandemic. And if we go back to phase 3, you're going to see so many of these businesses have to shut down again. Mainly, it's going to be those personal service businesses, your hair salons, your nail salons. We've already seen so many businesses have to shut down. And if we do that again, if we go back into phase 3, I think you're going to see a lot of these smaller businesses not survive a second shutdown. The one thing that is good with this is it's for the schools. They've already been through it, so they're more prepared if we do have to go back. Yeah, and I would hope that small businesses in our local area are also more prepared, having gone through that before, to make that sudden change and still have some continuity there. That being said, we've spoken to the Small Business Association of Michigan. We just spoke to Rob Fowler last week, who was very straightforward in saying that another shutdown or continued shutdown of other industries that still have not yet to come back, like some personal services such as spas and gyms, will lead to eventually seeing these businesses collapse and not be able to come back. So a second shutdown, even a move back to phase 3, which isn't nearly as severe as we were in March and in April, but is still, for these businesses, could very well be a matter of life and death. Yeah, and wearing a mask is uncomfortable. We all know it. We are in this together. So for the people that feel like wearing a mask is political and, they have the right not to wear a mask, if for any other reason, think about the economy. And if we have to move back, how much it's going to hurt and devastate some of these businesses. So like everyone is saying, just be kind and do it for the person next to you, do it for the small business, and hopefully we can move out of this come fall time, move forward, and get back to some, I don't want to say normal. I don't know if we'll ever go back to normal, or will you even look at life with, normal again, ever again. But at some point in time, just wear a mask, be kind. Let's get through this together so that we can move forward and help support the economy again.
Absolutely, Ronnie. And all those stories, we'll keep you updated on more information as it comes out about the potential for phase 3, if that presents itself as being something that's in the cards in the coming days and weeks, as well as other top stories each and every day. CivicCenterTV.com/coronavirus. In addition, we have links to resources from the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, as well as our local municipalities. And we spoke about the impact that moving back to phase 3 could have on local businesses, and how we spoke to Rob Fowler of the Small Business Association of Michigan recently. If you missed that interview, you can view that, as well as learn more information about our partnering stations, watch full episodes and short clips on our website, CivicCenterTV.com/megacast. For those of you watching on TV and online right now, if you see on your screen, I am just going to our homepage on CivicCenterTV.com. It's as easy as clicking on Megacast to get all those interviews, short clips, and full episodes, and as easy as clicking on Coronavirus to get all the latest local news and information, as well as resources from the state, the county, and the federal government, as well as your local municipalities, as well as we continue through this coronavirus pandemic. All the way through now in the end of July. We are definitely in the dog days of summer, and as we continue through the dog days of summer, it's really important that we maintain our safety, not only for ourselves out in the hot weather, but also for our animals. And joining us once again is the owner of Good Choices Dog Training, Elaine Chan, with us on the Oakland County Megacast to talk to us about that and more. Elaine, thank you for being with us again.
Hi.
Appreciate having you on. How have you been since we last spoke?
I'm doing good. Actually, we're getting much busier than it was before. I would say business is definitely picking up a little bit. It was nice to see a lot of people really are, now that things are becoming more relaxed, they are starting to consider, the dog needs to get help, the dog needs to get lessons and training, and also get them out and about and doing activities with them.
Yeah, people have definitely been more active outside with their pets as of late. I've seen a lot of people saw a lot of people over the weekend out walking their dogs, out for runs and so on. It was really hot over the weekend. That's got to also affect the dogs like it does us. What should dog owners, especially new pet owners and first-time dog owners, be aware of when they're out with their puppies and they're out with their dogs during this time where it's so hot and humid out, to make sure they're keeping their animals safe as well?
I think most importantly is knowing the dog's health and breed. Like some dogs definitely can exercise a little bit longer or in hotter weather, but some breeds are not able to. For example, like bulldogs or a dog with like thicker coat and hair. So usually you can choose a pick and time that actually going to work out well for you and your dog, and make sure that you always bring lots of water. For what I do, I usually will bring like a jug of water that actually can keep the water cold, so you can use that something like a stainless steel water bottle. I also make sure that I rest a lot, give the dog a lot of shade. And there's also cooling gears that you can buy at pet store for the dogs as well. So like sometimes I use a cooling jacket, depending on how sunny it is, because sometimes it could be humid and hot but not sunny. But if there's a lot of sun, then I usually try to put something cover the dog's body so they don't get sunburned. But just make sure that you know your dog's limit. You need to know how often you exercise them, and don't overdo it, don't overexert them, and make sure that you give them plenty of rest, plenty of water, and plenty of chances to cool down.
Elaine, who is your four-legged friend there?
This is Moo Moo Pie. This is my little girl. Yeah.
So when it comes to training a dog, we're in the middle of this right now. We have a rescue dog, and we are doing the clicker training. But one of the things is when you're home a lot, you can work with them more, but now we're seeing more and more people go back to work. What advice do you give to pet owners, new pet owners who are in the middle of training, but now their schedule has changed?
I think the most important thing is that they need to start practicing when they are to go back, trying to be as normal as possible. So one of the challenges that I tend to experience is a lot of people are not cradling their dog. They're not leaving their dog home and being away for a few hours because they're not going out and doing things. They're staying home a lot more than they usually would be. So I think one of the things is that you got to practice what I call forced separation, meaning you have to put the dog in the crate during the day, even when you're not able to, be physically away from them. You have to actually practice that a lot more, or sometimes actually put a dog in the crate and then leaving them in the crate for a few hours, actually going out and doing something on your own without taking them as well, because that's simulating what it would be like if you were to go to work and you have to, for a new puppy or a new dog that you're not trusting of them to be alone yet, that might be a safer way to manage them. Or you have to also think about an alternative. Maybe you put them in a gate behind somewhere in like a laundry room or some place that is puppy safe. Make sure you buy them plenty of toys from the pet store, like puzzle toys and treat dispensing toy to keep the experience pleasant, and start practicing it now and don't wait till like next week you're going to go to work and then you do it like 2 days before you go to work. No, if you know that things are going back to normal, you're most likely going to be going to work in next month or something, start working on this right now. Also, you can think about there are pet care business are open now, so there's many daycare resuming business, even though they may not be in full capacity. So do think about, other than doing it on your own, there are other pet care professionals out there, that individuals that can do daycare, dog walks, and things like that. So that could also be an option for people as well.
We're joined by Elaine Chan. She is the owner of Good Choices Dog Training, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And just like for humans, especially in times like this where we're all cooped up at home, or we're just going from work and to home, or from home to the grocery store and back, whatever the case may be, socialization is so important, especially for our younger animals as well, as they're getting adjusted to their new situation and learning how to be and learning to behave properly. There's a new group that's been started in the local area. It's called the Fun Group, which features events like Woof Woof Fun Time. Can you explain what this new Fun Group is and how people can get involved?
I started that kind of like when things were resuming, sort of more casual or more normal. I think probably back in May, we formally started forming a fun group. I've always done fun events. I've held like corgi get-togethers, Shih Tzu get-togethers, socialization group, provided people, a space, a opportunity, also a networking that they can do to support each other in terms of doing things with the dog. The concept is that we go on adventures. So it started out, it was just me and one of my friend who has a pet care business, Casey, she and I go on hikes a lot. And then next time I think, a lot more people really enjoy doing this because it makes us want to go out and do activity. So we founded this fun group called Fun Time, and basically it's a private Facebook group that you can join. You can purchase membership, and then you can come to all of our events once you're becoming a member. And so we host photography event. We had a photography event with Rough Life Photography, which is a local business as well. And we had a nature photo shoot, as well as yesterday we just had an indoor photo shoot in a pet store in conjunction with the corgi ice cream event that we had held. We also had done some nature hikes, some picnic. Last we actually went to the beach in Kensington with one of our members, so that was a lot of fun. We saw the puppy for the first time swimming. It was Bowie. I watched her grew up, since she was a puppy, and it was just so nice to see that, the parents even, said something to me like, hey, really thank you for running these events, arranging them, organizing them, and putting them together so people, get to be with other people and see them. And also because we're all in a nice group, so we're all really like a family. We support each other. We follow the rules. We keep the social distancing and all the good stuff.
One of the good things to come out of this crisis, so many people have adopted rescue dogs from shelters and organizations. But if you have a new rescue dog and you want to start socializing them, how do you prepare the new pet owner to introduce their dog into a new group?
The ways that I do it is that I try to not introduce them to another dog if you're not sure of them in their own home environment first, because a lot of times they will act differently, or they tend to be more protective of their own space. So usually I would suggest them to coming to a walk, especially the nature walk's going to help a lot, because once they're in that environment, the dog tend to smell other things and be more stimulated by the smell, the squirrels, the woods and trees and things like that. So usually going on a group walk is the number one most easy way, because as they're walking, they're exercising, they're not really focusing on barking and being reactive, because once you're keeping the dog moving and moving and moving, they kind of blend. So I would suggest if you can do it on your own, do that. Do keep a nice distance, because a lot of dogs are not sure. So you keep both the guys on leash. You're starting out in a further distance, and once you feel the dog is becoming more comfortable, they're not growling, they're not stiff, their body language are okay, then you can get a little bit closer. So usually you can walk a dog, a person, and a dog. So a dog on the left-hand side, the people kind of in the middle, then you can walk side by side, or one person can walk ahead of you, and the other person can walk behind you. So then you're stimulating the dog have to sniff the other dogs, behind. So when it comes to fun group events, we do this like kind of a group walk introduction things. And once they become more acquainted, we do tend to, have them sniff, face to face, or sometimes we do a long line so they can be on a long leash, so they can kind of play with each other. So the people doesn't have to be, so close to each other at this time. But, going on a walk is the best way to introduce dogs that are not sure whether they're good or not. It's kind of like us people go up to get a cup of coffee down the road and just sit down and talk, but this is how dogs tend to get to know each other and bond. One of the positive things that happened to me with my dog is that she's not good with big dogs, and during the times with the fun group starting, I went on a walk with my friend Casey and her dog Husky girl, and Husky was a big dog, but all the hikes and walks that we started doing, Mumu got so comfortable with Husky, they become best friend. And recently in July, we actually did a dance competition in Ohio, and they did so well together as a pair for the first time. So I was very impressed by how these walks really help them bond and help them overcome their struggle in terms of socialization department.
Elaine Chan with us. She is the owner of Good Choices Dog Training, with us on the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations all throughout the local area. So we talked a little bit earlier on about training your puppies, training your dogs to be ready for when you do return to some semblance of normalcy, whether that be going to work occasionally during the week in the coming weeks and months, or when the pandemic is over. In terms of determining how you should go about training your dog, because every dog is different, everyone has their different every dog has their different personalities, it's different breed to breed. What are those first steps that people should be taking and families should be taking in determining what's the best method for training their puppies now and for in the future as they grow older?
I think having a structure what they like when you do go back to normal, when you do go back to work, like you were saying, like some people maybe only working part-time and not, right away go back to work completely full-time. But I think dogs do crave a structure. So having an idea, like, when they need to do certain things and really making sure that you're arranging that, that will be a good thing to start with. I also do think that any basic formal obedience training with any dogs are going to be better than not doing any training at all. So because they do understand how to communicate to their people a little bit better, doing yes or no, getting the dog plenty of things that they can do to keep them busy and occupied. So that if you're preparing to leave them and going back to normal, the dogs are going to get less activity because you're not home with them, doing these things. So making sure that you do get a walk in maybe in the morning, or have a dog walker come in the afternoon while you're still at work, and take advantage of going to the pet store and getting them puzzle toy, mental stimulation toys that you can put treats in, to get them like, where, hey, I can have mom leave some food out for me while I'm eating this bone. My mom will be at work for a couple hours, and really having that schedule is important, especially if you got a puppy. As they're getting older, their schedule will change, so you do have to start practicing, like maybe leaving them out in the crate a little longer if you're still doing the potty training thing, so that way they're not trying to break the potty habit and then causing problem in that aspect. But you're teaching the puppy to hold their bowel a little bit longer, hold their urine a little bit longer, so gradually by the time things do rolls around where you all go back to work, the puppy's going to be like, okay, you know what, I can be out of my crate and I not to make my accidents, and I can hold it till I go outside to do the potty, so that everything's are still in some kind of a good structure. So having a structure, having a routine really do help.
Elaine, anything else that's important for us to touch on before we let you go today?
I would say there are a lot of events coming up that I will be doing in the West Bloomfield Parks area. I'm partnering with the parks. There are still several summer camps that are coming up, as well as in about a couple of weeks, we're going to partner with Premier Pet Supplies in West Bloomfield. We're having a social distancing, social ice cream party thing where we're also working with our local small businesses, which I'm also really huge about supporting during this time. Despite the COVID had really like earlier people were saying, a lot of small businesses are really hurting. So I like to really also partner with them and support. So we will have the local treat company like Country Healthy Treats going to be there with us, giving us some samples for us to try. We had the ice cream lady that was on last time, but my dog absolutely loves her ice cream. She's going to be there to support us. We have a photographer from Rough Life's going to be there to support us. So our Premier Pet's going to be, giving us the opportunity in the space. So we're going to be doing that. And the summer camps are fun, through West Bloomfield Park. You can find more information on the West Bloomfield Park website or my Facebook page. It's basically a camp that dogs come out based on whoever sign up. I tweak and modify the curriculum or the agenda, but we walk around the nature trail or the park, and then we do some training. And I got pictures and videos on my Facebook that people can check out as well. But it's really fun. I mean, even if the dog had never been to any training or not sure about socializing with dogs and people, like we have one that came a couple of days ago in the camp. What's the issue with people? She barks, but by the time she comes out, we have ways to kind of help her, overcome that and introduce that. By the end of the camp, she was walking next to all of us, all the dogs, and having fun, and the owner were having a really good time. So those are the events that people can check out as well, and also, check out the fun group. Any question, they can directly contact me on my phone, email, all that good stuff, so we can, get you hooked up. I also really do think that people need to realize that it is so important, despite what is going on right now, that these dogs need training. A lot of times when I get the phone call, people waited too long, or they didn't socialize for 6 months, and all of a sudden now they're like, oh, I'm going to start doing it. The dogs do have struggle, despite whatever everybody thinks of, the safety measurement, we're trying to all do it as safe as possible. When I run my events, we're going to follow the rules. But I do think that at some point things do have to, get back to, more normality, I would say. So it's really important that people, realize that the dogs need to get out. They need to get training. They need to get socialization. If you're not comfortable in the group situation, consider doing private lesson. We can do it outdoor. I do outdoor classes as well. We can do it inside, keeping, wearing masks, keeping further apart distance, or you can do it online. We can also do it over the phone or remotely through video coachings and Skype or Zoom or any of that, online things that we can work on as well. So it's really important that to not think that, I'm still worried, but really the dog needs help. We need to get them the help that they need it.
Well, Elaine, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yep, you're very welcome.
We appreciate it. Elaine Chan from Good Choices Dog Training. She's the owner of Good Choices Dog Training, with us on the Oakland County Megacast all throughout the local area. And it's interesting always to hear from Elaine and her perspective. She always emphasizes the need for training, whether we're going into the pandemic and people are adopting puppies and adopting other animals and are getting them acclimated to their homes, or now as they're continuing to train them and getting ready for a big adjustment in their animals' lives when they go back to work and the kids go back to school and we go back to some semblance of normalcy, because that's going to definitely affect them, as they've been so used to being around their humans every day.
Tyler, as you know, we have a rescue dog, and we're going through this issue right now with socialization of this dog, because we're not around people, or you're not having people over to your homes. You're not taking your dog to a dog park. And so she has so many good, smart ideas. I will say I just joined her Facebook group. And so it's Good Choices Dog Training in Michigan by Elaine. So if you go on Facebook and you search Good Choices, make sure you get the Dog Training in Michigan by Elaine. The groups and all these events seem to be a great way to introduce your dogs to other dogs, because It can be so stressful when you have a dog that's not properly trained. It's stressful for the dog, and it's stressful for you as the pet owner as well.
Well, we'll keep up with Elaine as we go forward, and more of these events pop up. It's a great opportunity, and not only to socialize your pets and finding events like this with Elaine and other people like her in the community and all throughout the local area are holding. Not only a great way to socialize your pets, but also get out and get some social interaction yourself in a safe manner as well as we continue through this pandemic. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, a lot of different industries have been affected by COVID-19. We've talked previously about how the courts have been affected. We'll talk about how criminal defense has been affected as well with Jonathan Jones, attorney at law. Coming up after this quick break, you're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return in just a moment.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
Or blue. But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we are on 88.1 WBFH The Biff and on Birmingham Area Municipal Access in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin as we continue to bring you the latest news and information about the COVID-19 pandemic and more in the local area and provide you with stories of different experiences experienced by people in all walks of life in our local area as this pandemic continues on, and everybody in every industry and everything has in some way been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've talked recently about how the courts have been affected, and we've talked previously about how certain areas of the law have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. That certainly does not exclude criminal defense, which is so crucial at all times of the year, in normal times, but especially now, there's definitely going to be some nuance to that. And joining us, our last guest today, is Jonathan Jones, attorney at law. He is a criminal defense attorney, and a brief disclaimer for those of you viewing us on TV and listening to us on the radio. He is also the father of our field reporter, Erica Jones. So Jonathan, thank you for being with us today.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tyler, because I wasn't sure I was going to get a good plug-in for my daughter and make sure you knew that I had an aspiring journalist.
Yeah, well, we are glad to have her on our team. We appreciate the work she does each and every day. She had a great report today from out in the field about opening day for the Detroit Tigers, and we're glad to have her on the team. So, Jonathan, how have you been over the course of the pandemic? How's business been affected by COVID-19?
I've been really fortunate because the way our office is set up, we've been able to really work remotely without problems. A lot of the clients who have contacted me do so remotely via text, or they'll call, or some will send an email. So it as a function of the world we live in today, there's a lot of stuff that's done remotely or administratively without the face-to-face contact. So we were really set up to function amid the COVID changes, and we'll talk more about how the courts are doing it in a second. But we've been very, very lucky. I have two incredible women who run the office, and they've done just a remarkable job making the people who are responsible for comfortable.
So let's talk about how the court's been run. We've heard from our local courts, we've heard from a federal court recently, and we've previously talked to other attorneys about how some other courts have been operating. But in terms of criminal defense cases, those come with their own nuances in regular times. How have they been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think that, unfortunately for everyone involved, things have slowed down. I don't think there's any way that that can be prevented. However, the courts are really getting better using the Zoom meeting technology, and more courts are embracing it. It's interesting to me because there's good and bad points to it. I think going forward, even if we get back to what we would consider to be normal face-to-face contact and congregating, I think there's still a place where the Zoom technology can make things a lot more efficient. It's just that, like anything else, there's a learning curve and people are sort of resistant to change, period. But I think that it's given us an opportunity to function, with the exception of jury trials, which we'll circle back to in a minute. But we've been very lucky. We've been able to move a lot of stuff and keep things going. I'm very, very grateful.
So much of what you do involves personal and sensitive information. Are you concerned with the technology use and possible hacking at all?
I'm not, and I'll tell you why. The vast majority of what I do is done in a court that is a place that the public has complete access to. Now, you can't bring recording equipment into a court, Ronnie. I know you know that. But by and large, people can go in and see the docket. So the identity of the people I represent, how and why they're there, is all public information. I don't know whether or not someone can see me in a Zoom conference or watch a Zoom conference via YouTube, is how the courts are broadcasting it. I don't know whether or not they have access to, what my ID is, how I would log in via Zoom. But no, I don't really feel any issue with that or concern about a lack of privacy. And at the end of the day, I think it's identical to the person who's standing next to me or sitting behind me.
So with that in mind, is the communication between yourself and your clients as you're defending these people in court, has that been modified at all? Has that relationship been changed and affected how you represent these people, how they defend themselves in a court of law?
I don't think so. The vast majority, the one difference between criminal defense and other forms of law, particularly civil, the vast majority of what we do is the showing up process, where we'll talk to the prosecutor and or the judge and figure out how we're going to resolve something or what we're looking to negotiate to get towards a resolution. For people like me who've been around for a while, you have contacts and relationships with these people. So you can get a hold of them and you can talk prior to court, prepare. But the world we live in today, that's just how people communicate. I joke all the time that if I didn't have the children I do, and the only way they'll communicate with me is via text, I wouldn't be prepared for that now. But a lot of the people I represent are incredibly comfortable talking to me on their cells, or will communicate via email, or a lot of time it's texting. There's still going to be dead periods for us where you may have a bunch of lawyers in court, even in a Zoom scenario where we're waiting to actually go on the record with our case. And naturally, we can't really talk on the phone then, but we can stay in touch with people via text and or email and answer questions in real time. That's what I really try and do, is just make sure that if someone reaches out to me with a question, I can get back to them immediately, because they're generally not calling to ask me what I'm going to have for lunch. It's something that they want an immediate answer for.
Jonathan Jones with us. He is an attorney at law, a criminal defense attorney, with us on the Oakland County Megacast all throughout the local area. So you touched earlier on jury trials and how those have definitely been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In many cases with criminal cases, they are of a timely manner for those that are being, for both the defendant and the plaintiff, as they're trying to resolve these issues efficiently and effectively, so that if someone is incarcerated, that they're not kept away for an unreasonably long period of time for their cases. With the delays in jury trials, has that affected how the system has worked? And what do you do as a criminal defense attorney in partnership with the judges and with the courts and with the plaintiffs in order to make that process speedy and efficient as is the rights of the people?
Well, everything up to the jury trial portion, we have some input and say in. But at the end of the day, if a case cannot be resolved and a jury trial is required, that is something that will have to be done in person. Right now, I don't think there's a safe way that you could bring in a jury panel of 45 people and keep them safe in a courtroom with all the other people who would be required, the judge, her staff, deputies if needed, and other people involved in the process. So what's happening is a lot of that stuff, there's a small portion of the cases I handle that would go to jury trial anyway, but the ones that will get that far are sort of simmering on the back burner until the time comes right. I want to come back to something you sort of alluded to as far as the incarceration element goes. If somebody is incarcerated awaiting trial, they're supposed to have that trial within 180 days. But the practical reality is that people who may not have been eligible for bond on prior situations or what we used to consider normal may be out with different kinds of supervision. For example, they may be tethered to their home where they can function during the day and go to court or what have you, but they're in essence on house arrest. So that's something that's changed a little bit. But again, the vast majority of my cases, or any practitioner who does what I do, in excess of 95% of them are going to resolve prior to trial. But unfortunately, the ones that are in trial or need to go to trial are going to wait. So you have cases that started back in March, when this really took off, cases that were scheduled to go to trial in maybe March, April, and May. Those cases haven't been heard. And then, as you know, every day we add more cases to the inventory of pending cases, so those cases would be behind. It's going to be done based on, A, whether or not the people are in custody, and also the type of crime. I think the more serious stuff, your capital cases, any type of homicide, any type of armed robbery, any type of sex crime, I think that stuff will take a high priority. And I'm not trivializing other situations, but those are the evaluations that have to be made in order to determine what's going on. I've learned in Wayne County what they're going to do is they're going to assign judges to basically do nothing but try cases in jury form. So those judges won't have other cases to manage or any type of contested hearing or arraignment or what have you. But in order to catch up, they're going to devote courtrooms and judges directly to fulfill that purpose. And I suspect you'll see that in other counties as well, specifically in Oakland.
What are your thoughts on releasing inmates early due to COVID-19 and being unable to protect them behind bars? Because it's pretty hard to socially distance yourself when you're in a prison or in a jail.
It's a great question. I find that people are sort of falling into different categories with the whole thing about whether their priority is safety or other things. I've had administrators and judges tell me publicly and privately that they want to make sure everyone's safe. I mean, no one would want to have to deal with that on his resume if someone were locked up and, God forbid, got sick or worse, got really sick and or died. No one wants to deal with that. And the sheriffs know that too. These guys and women who are in these positions are bright, and they're there responsible for the people they're responsible for. They don't want to put anyone at risk. They don't want to put their own staff at risk. And I think the decisions that are made are primarily designed with that in mind. It's almost analogous to the school situation where, of course, the school people, you have the freedom to come and go. But at the end of the day, I think you could see that there's a similarity between having large groups of people in a place and trying to figure out the most safe way to place them when you didn't have to worry about that before. My wife and I were talking about that this morning. You take a high school like West Bloomfield, if you normally would have 35 kids in the class, you don't have the space in there to spread them out. So what are you going to do? So I see it the same way here. I personally would like to think the decision is made based on safety, but if you're dealing with someone who's a danger to the community, there's other steps you can take to ensure that the public at large is not at risk. The home confinement, there's GPS tethers where you can monitor movement, and those are a couple of things that are available.
Jonathan Jones with us. He's an attorney at law, criminal defense attorney with us on the Oakland County Megacast all throughout the local area. So we've had these virtual means come into play for the courts during the pandemic in an abundance of caution, in a need, as it's really not, as you said, entirely plausible or safe to have people in court as is regular during our normal times. Do you see elements of what we're doing now during this pandemic sticking after the pandemic, either for efficiency purposes, for other scenarios that may come into play, such as virtual trials and so on? Do you see that being an element of what we could experience in criminal law in the future?
I can't see virtual trials for the same reason you're not seeing them now, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity to utilize this technology for efficiency down the road. I've told prosecutors and judges who I have relationships with, if I were, king for a day, I would never bring in a 45-person traffic docket to a court ever again. I would put the city attorney or prosecutor in a room, and I would put them on the video Zoom conference and have the lawyers come in and work out whatever needs to be worked out and whatever. I mean, it could be done so efficiently and save time and what have you, but different people for different reasons may not want to do that. But you're asking me, could it work? I believe it can, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity to do things quickly, but the court administrators will have to make those decisions.
As someone prepares for their own criminal case in these times, what should they be aware of? What should they be mentally preparing for as they go into that process with all these different variations in place?
At the end of the day, I tell people, whether you're standing in a hallway while your lawyer talks to a prosecutor or you're sitting in a courtroom next to your lawyer waiting for your case to be called, at the end of the day, when you actually stand up and your case is called and you put your name on the record, to me, there really isn't any difference. You see the judge who you would be looking in the eye face to face and introduce yourself and explain how or why you're there, and you talk to the prosecutor the same way. You see them on the screen, you look in his or her eyes just like you would there. So at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't really make any difference. For some people, even though it's a public hearing and it may be broadcast on YouTube, they may feel more comfortable because you don't see the people who may be watching. For me, I'm as comfortable, talking in a courtroom as, anyone else would be having lunch with a friend. But I understand by and large, for a lot of the people I represent, that's not the case. So I think for them, it doesn't really, there's an opportunity where you're not surrounded by people and have that horrible sensation of everybody looking at you. But at the end of the day, to me, it's the same thing. I think, and that's why I think that there's some opportunity down the road where you could do things more efficiently. The communication, again, it's really not different. I have some clients who don't have the technology to do a Zoom hearing. So I have them come in here. We sit a distance apart. We both wear masks, and we use my computer to accomplish what we need to do. So those are the big things. We make sure that we have masks here, and anyone who comes in, we have the individual wear one, and we're constantly rubbing sanitizer all over our hands and making sure that we're as clean as we can be. But I really believe if you take the necessary precautions, that there's a way to do this safely. That's how we're doing it.
One of the things that we've seen even doing this broadcast is sometimes there's a delay in the connection or a connection is dropped. Have you had those cases or those instances while you're in the middle of one of your cases?
I've never had it in the middle, but sometimes the process is a little bit slower to start. I've gone into Zoom hearings on certain dockets where at any given time there might be 50 people logged in. And it's kind of funny, but if I were standing in a courtroom, I would be trying to pester the prosecutor or the judge's clerk to get my case called. And now you just do it with the chat function and in the Zoom hearing. But at the end of the day, the time we spend waiting oftentimes can outweigh the time we're actually doing it. But that's just a function of, as much as I'd like to be the only case, it doesn't work that way for me or anyone else. There might be 45 people who have matters called in that morning, and the judge has to make a decision in what order they're called.
Jonathan,
but I've never had one dropped in the middle. Sometimes they tell you that there's technical difficulties and whatever, and you have different people coming in different forms. Some are using, regular computers. Some are literally using their cell phones, and some are driving in a car using their cell phones. So that you have different forms of technology feeding into the system. But I've been lucky; I've never been cut off.
Jonathan, anything else before we let you go today?
I just want people to realize that most importantly, stay safe. Communicate with, if you have a case and you need to get a hold of someone or you have questions, we're here. The courts are doing an incredible job making this as functional as they can, and I give them a lot of credit. And if there's a message to send to the public, it's just that. It may take a little bit longer, but it's happening and people are doing a great job with it. And it shouldn't be intimidating, just, oh my God, I got caught in COVID, what happens? We've been doing this for a while. We're figuring it out. We get better every day.
Well, we appreciate having you on with us today.
All right. If you see that reporter, tell her father loves her, okay?
Will do. I will tell her right after we are done with the show today. Jonathan Jones with us. He is an attorney at law, criminal defense attorney, and, of course, the father of our field reporter, Erica Jones. We appreciate having him on, talking about how criminal defense has been altered and has been modified by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the process is very similar. There are some changes, there are some delays, but it's good to hear that there is a working relationship still between the courts, between the defense attorneys, and between both plaintiff and defendant to make these cases happen efficiently and effectively so everybody can go on with their normal lives, because no one likes being in court.
There are going to be permanent changes that come out of this pandemic, and you're going to see that in all facets of our lives, including in the court system. I think going forward, you are going to see them utilize technology to get through some of these dockets quicker, and that's going to help all of us help manage the criminal justice system, which is overburdened so many times.
Yeah, it's definitely going to hopefully I would hope that what comes of this, like Jonathan had said, is that some of those, not to necessarily say lower priority, but less necessary to be so take such heavy time, like traffic cases. I remember when I had to go to court recently, just before the beginning of the year, because I may or may not have gotten a speeding ticket for losing track of the speed limit sign when it changed. I remember being in that court for about a half hour waiting for a 10:05, 10 o'clock call after the fact. And if those were able to be done by virtual means, I wouldn't have had to have left the office that day for a couple of hours to have been able to go to that case. And I think that everybody in front and behind me would have gotten through a lot quicker. So maybe that is something that we will see in the future. It'll be interesting to see, not only in criminal defense, but also in traffic, but in all forms of courts of law and different forms of law, how that's going to be impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, by introducing all of this new technology and these new ways of communicating and operating the systems at be.
This is also going to require people to manage their schedules and their time efficiently as well. So as a reporter, I've sat in hundreds of courtrooms and watched hundreds of court cases through my career. And there were a lot of times people were sitting, waiting for the judge to appear for a good hour, 2 hours before that judge arrived into the courtroom. So having something like this manages the time, I think, better for all of those involved, because if you're not in that, if you're not up on Zoom, people know you're not there.
That and more we'll continue to talk about as we go through time and see these changes happen in real time. That is going to do it for our show today. Alongside Ronnie Dahl, I am Tyler Keefe, thanking you for tuning in. You can find more coronavirus news on our website on civiccentertv.com. Just click on our coronavirus link, and it'll take you to a page with our top stories, information from the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and local municipalities right at your fingertips. In addition, if you missed any of our interviews today or want to watch full episodes back, learn more about our partnering stations, civiccentertv.com/megacast. And of course, you can tune in to us every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on our family of TV and radio stations. That is going to do it for today's program. We thank our crew and all of our guests for joining us today on the show. Ronnie and I will return tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our family of TV and radio stations. And thank you for tuning in to the Megacast.